Hey everybody, welcome to Wager Talk. Week 2 of the college football season is upon us, overreaction week. As Bryan and I were discussing just a few minutes ago to what happened in week 1. A couple of teams that were in action last week. Well, one struggled throughout an entire 4 quarters but was able to win the game, that being the Florida Gators. Kentucky up 35-10 and 35-17 at the half. They get beat 44-35. They're matching up this week in Gainesville. And guys, Florida lands 16.5-17, total 47.5. Drew Barker has 4 touchdown passes in the first quarter and a half last week against Southern Miss, and then everything went downhill after that. And Bryan, I got to ask you right off the block, Mark Stoops is squarely on the hot seat, and I got to ask you if Kentucky has any chance, in your opinion, to bounce back against the Gators this week.
No, they're not. They won't win straight up. But yeah, they were completely outplayed in that game, despite what the score was in the first half. And you know, the Florida team played in a rain shower. That took a little bit out of them, and they were expecting a lot from this transfer at tight end. He broke his leg on the kickoff, and so he's not going to be there now. But every year you expect Florida to come out with that offense. It's going to be a little bit better, a little bit better. He didn't show up last week.
Yeah, Del Rio, the quarterback for Florida, so last week, and I guess I'm being kind of nice here. Yeah. But Marco, I was going to mention to you that, you know, this Kentucky defense, they gave up 27 or more points 7 times last year. Last week, when Southern Miss stops making mistakes and stops turning the ball over, they end up giving up 44, including 27 points in the second half alone. I'm not so sure that Stoops has got the defensive elixir to hold down what is kind of a sluggish Florida offense thus far.
Yeah, Southern Miss, and as you said, this was probably the most misleading score of the weekend last week. If you dig inside the box scores, and that's what I want to do, they ran the ball 68 times on Kentucky last week, did Southern Miss. 68 times. They also threw the ball 29 times. They had offensive possessions 96 to just 50 for Kentucky. Now, if Kentucky can't contain Southern Miss, they're going to have their hands full against Florida, even if Florida just has to run the football, considering what Southern Miss did against them. And then on the flip side, people are going to look at that score with Florida and say, wow, they were a 35-point favorite and they just barely got through. Well, they did barely get through. They did just what they had to do to win. And how much do you really want to show against a UMass team when you got your SEC opener the next week? And that's the way I'm looking at this ball game.
I'm watching that game against Southern Miss, Kentucky and Southern Miss, and I had Southern Miss. And I'm sitting there just watching them just make mistake after mistake in the first half, down 35-10. So I don't care that they're dominating. I'm down 35-10. And, you know, we got 7. We got it early before the line dropped under 7, which was weeks before the game started. But I'm sitting there watching that going, I don't care if they're dominating but making mistakes. They're down 35-10. They're probably not coming back. Didn't make a second half play on Southern Miss. Rode it out and was very happy, obviously, with the end game and the final score being 44-35. As far as the SEC was concerned overall, we'll get your play on this game in just a second, Marco. But I was going to ask you, Bryan, are people overreacting to the fact that the SEC had it a little bit rough in week 1?
Well, everybody's going to overreact. I even sent out a tweet. I said, who had a worse week, the Pac-12 or the SEC? Because neither one of them looked very good overall. Alabama showed that they're the team to beat. But yeah, SEC, once you start playing some decent teams, they're known for a lot of cupcakes on their schedule. So a lot of people now are starting to look, you know, maybe they're not as good as we thought. I think they'll be all right in the long run. You know, with the recruits, you got to take a look at their recruits. They recruit better than anybody. The SEC will be fine.
Quarterback play has got to get better in the SEC. Which team gets the better quarterback play in this one, Marco? Your play?
Well, I just think this is a mismatch in the trenches. Again, if I go back to if Southern Miss can manhandle them, Florida's going to be able to manhandle them with their offensive line. The other part that I like is when you get a team like Florida that has that lackluster performance, that's a go on for me the next week because you're going to get a couple things. Automatically, you're getting a benefit in the line. Vegas and the public are going to overreact to 1 week. But you get the coaches now, they've got, you know, free will to ride this team a little bit harder this week in practice and get their attention and say, you know, you're lucky we were playing UMass last week, and I think you're going to see a much more focused effort from Florida this week, and I think that's going to spell doom for Kentucky. My numbers have Florida winning it by 21, so I'm going to go ahead and lay the number with Florida here.
Yeah, potentially soon spelling the doom for Mark Stoops at Kentucky. All right, don't forget you can take $10 off any purchase this weekend at WagerTalk.com. Use the coupon code Brady10. Not Garoppolo, Marco, but Brady10. We got more to come. We are Wager Talk TV. Stick around.